Good evening. I'm Chris Thomas here with Madison Wade. We are live and we are continuing our breaking news coverage of the PG&E power shutoffs. We'll be live for at least the next 2 hours, bringing you the latest information.
And PG&E shut off power to more than 500,000 customers at midnight. Round 2 of those shutoffs, which were supposed to happen at noon, were now delayed, but now they have actually happened as of about 8 o'clock tonight or so for those weather conditions. There is so much to unpack here with all of this. So we're going to head over to Mike Duffy, what we know so far about these shutoffs and who is all affected here, Mike.
All right, Madison, Chris. So many of our viewers have been asking us how many people and what areas are most affected. Well, over 275,000 customers just in our 16-county area here are without power tonight. And we just heard that phase 2 is happening. We're waiting to get those numbers as well. So the Sierra foothills is the place that's seeing the most impact. I want to show you a graphic that we have that created of the counties in our area. So you can see here the ones being impacted the most are Nevada, which has over 43,000 customers without power, Placer County, which has over 51,000 customers, and El Dorado, where over 50,000 customers are in the dark tonight. So Solano County also has over 30,000, and Tuolumne has over 34,000 customers. All of these people affected by these power outages. And I also wanted to point out of note, Calaveras County has over 23,000 customers. Also, I want to take a look at a satellite map that we have from PG&E. And this gives you a better idea of some of the outages. If we zoom out a little bit, I think you'll get an even better perspective of the area that we're talking about, because there's 2 main areas here, essentially, that are having the most impact tonight. So one is the area that runs along the Sierra foothills. And that area, of course, we know is the most impacted, most people who don't have power tonight. So it really starts near Butte County, near Chico, and then that area kind of runs south all down the Sierra through Plumas, Sierra, Nevada, Placer, El Dorado, Amador, and Calaveras counties, and Tuolumne right there at the bottom. The counties most affected are, of course, Nevada, Placer, and El Dorado, and those are the people who are most without power. And then I also want to take a look a little further out at the left side of your screen, basically where the East Bay ends and counties in our area start to pick up. This area includes Yolo and especially Solano, which itself has over 32,000 customers without power tonight. So it's a massive area covering this whole outage, covering just about every county in Northern California. And Chris and Madison, this gives you an idea of just the extraordinary number of people that are impacted tonight.
Especially with phase 2 just happening within the last couple hours, that added a lot more people to the list without power tonight. Some areas seeing their power come back on, but PG&E is saying this is a fluid situation, so power could very well be turned off again, given the weather conditions as they change.
And you know, many people who have no power, they are not happy, as you can imagine, but they are not alone. Let's take a listen to what Governor Gavin Newsom had to say today.
You know, my kids are at home right now. I want them in school. I've got a bunch of businesses that are impacted, and I want to, I'd rather criticize Donald Trump than act like him talking about my businesses in Northern California, but we're in the middle of wine crush, and folks are running around trying to get generators right now in the middle of crush. I mean, it's very consequential. And by the way, I'm outraged because it didn't need to happen. Didn't need to happen if you had a investor-owned utility was making kind of investments that your investor-owned utility was making down here, and focusing on modern transmission lines, and focusing on modern ways of turning on and off lights that wouldn't be disruptive in the aggregate to 1 million or 2 million people, as it potentially may impact over the next 24 to 48 hours. So it was unnecessary. They're in bankruptcy because of their terrible management going back decades. They've created these conditions. It was unnecessary. We're doing everything in our power, my gosh, doing everything in our power to help them help themselves. Now it's time for them to do the right thing and get out of bankruptcy and get this system to the 21st century.
And so there you hear from the governor tonight, obviously expressing his anger with what is happening, talking about they need to move into the 21st century, especially when you think about this is the sixth largest economy in the world. And we've seen so many people saying this is what happens, millions of people without power.
Yeah, and people asking, is this the new normal? Is this going to be every single time we have a windstorm of this magnitude? Are we going to see all of these counties shut off power at once? We've had so many comments like that coming through, people being understanding, also people being very frustrated. We hear you on both sides of the table tonight. And of course, we're inviting all of you who have questions, comments about this. We have our phones on us. We're going to be following this Facebook Live too and responding to you throughout the next couple hours.
Candace saying no cell service either. She is in Grass Valley in Nevada County. We've seen people expressing anger about that as well. So let's get over to Monica now to give us a look at conditions, because that's what this is all about, the conditions.
You're absolutely right about that. Yeah, these winds, that's what could fuel potentially any spark that starts. So without a spark, there's not going to be any explosive fire growth. Currently, we're tracking those winds. As far as the peak wind gusts for today, anywhere from 30 to 35 miles per hour. And the humidity has been very low. At one point, tracking humidity as low as 3% in Santa Rosa. But what you're going to notice is that this will come up ever so slightly for tonight. Not a whole lot. And we usually expect much greater differences in morning conditions, afternoon and evening. We're just not seeing that variance as we head into this wind event because it's so dry. Now, in terms of where we're headed, our current winds 15 to 20 miles per hour in the valley, about 17 miles per hour over in Santa Rosa. The reason why I keep pointing that place out is because look at what happens as we head into the overnight hours, particularly between about midnight and 3 a.m. We're expecting winds at about 65 miles per hour plus through some of the North Bay Hills, over towards the foothills as well. 40 to 50 mile per hour winds. Currently, you can see how those contours here, that really displays where we're going to see some of the strongest winds. And that will be in the 80-50 corridor, just north of Highway 50, north of I-80, and then again over towards the North Bay Hills. This has been an area that unfortunately has dealt with a lot of fires over the past 5 or 6 years. And explosive fire growth will continue, at least the potential, until at least about midday for tomorrow. Then we start to see those winds backing off. Now, in terms of what's causing this, well, we had a low pressure system that brought us that cooler air. As it starts to move southward, and we're replacing it with this big high pressure ridge. So what we're going to find is offshore winds developing for tonight. Those are the ones that tend to heat up as they start to accelerate down the hill. They're dry as well. And unfortunately, it can lead to that explosive fire growth that we've been talking about. In particular, under the gun will be those North Bay Hill areas. Extreme fire danger for most of the day in Northern California. As we head into tonight, look at how, again, these contours start to change. We're talking right along Highway 50, just to the south, a bit towards north of I-80. But again, here we are, the western side of the valley, all the way through those North Bay Hills. That's going to be the area that we're going to be looking at, especially for tonight. Then into our late Thursday into Friday, this becomes a Southern California event. This is a statewide situation. Even folks in Southern California are preparing for the potential for power outages. As far as where that red flag warning continues, it's all the way through the valley, the foothills, parts of the Sierra, over towards the coast, and that will be until 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Gusty winds, low humidity, and the big takeaway from this, be ready to evacuate. Wind advisory also in place throughout the entire region here. Strongest overnight, highest over exposed ridges. That's why we're forecasting you can see those contours right through the 80-50 corridor, North Bay Hills. That's where some of the highest winds will be seen with rapid fire spread as we head into tonight. And like I said, most of tomorrow until about 5 p.m. Chris and Madison.
We're not stopping talking about this weather event. Obviously, it's going to continue for several days here, impacting so many different people in so many different areas. 34 counties, more than 800,000 customers. Phase 2 has happened. Phase 3 is next, and we're still kind of waiting to hear what time frame that's going to happen at.
That's right. I'm just looking at some of your comments. Anna Daniel saying, I think we need more than one power company so that we can choose better, kind of monopolizing things here. And that's why you see this large large outage, 800,000 customers, impacting millions of people. Here's what you need to know. There are resources available because PG&E knew they had to do something. So they've opened resource centers in the communities losing power. They are free places to go to charge your phone, get some AC. They have room for, we're told, about 100 people at each location. And they will be open from 8 in the morning to 6 at night for as long as these outages last. And I want to just stay here so that you can make sure you get this information. But that's the deal. For as long as the outages last, Madison, they don't really have a time frame. We know that this is a multiple day event. And then after the multiple day event into Thursday or Friday, then they need time to go through and inspect the lines. We're told they've got about 6,000, I should say, workers who are prepared to go and do that inspection, but then that takes time as well. So we were hearing as many as 4 to 5 days.
Yeah, they said that it could pass into next week, starting Monday, Tuesday. Obviously, for some areas, there was already some chatter of turning the power back on in more northern areas of the impact area, if you will, of that power shutoff map that we've been showing you. But again, we're constantly in communication with PG&E to see with the time frame of all of this. There's some confusion, frustration. We absolutely understand. And we are getting some comments too of people who are talking about cell phone service not working. So we're working to figure that out. We're making some phone calls for you all because of course that is very frustrating. If you don't have power and then you don't have cell service, we're going to figure out what's going on there.
And the other thing is, of course, we know you want to hear from PG&E. They actually gave us an update tonight on these very outages, about what's going on tonight and why they are doing these shutoffs. They reiterated that it was about safety for people. Take a listen.
We would like to remind our customers and our community members as to why we are making this decision. And this decision is all about public safety, which is our most important responsibility. Given the forecasts for the severe and widespread wind conditions that Scott will discuss, and the increased fire risk associated with these conditions, we took this step to ensure the safety of our customers and our communities as a last resort. And we're committed to reducing the risk of catastrophic wildfire events.
And we know it's very hard for people as they go through this, but the PG&E meteorologists are saying the weather is simply dangerous.
These events historically are the events that cause the most destructive wildfires in California history. And so we're seeing some of the same conditions that are going to develop in this event that we've seen in previous offshore Diablo and Santa Ana wind events. So it's a pretty serious situation.
As they said, and as Monica has been telling us for days now, the weather is a big issue, and we are really just going into the main event coming up tonight around midnight. That is something that we'll be back on live throughout the evening, walking you through that main event as well.
All right, we also are going to go back to the cell phone conversation, the service conversation. A lot of people wondering what's going on with their cell phone service. We're hearing you, and it sounds like a lot of people are commenting saying it's mostly Verizon, but again, all these carriers, we were talking to them earlier, getting statements from them, and they were saying that they have backup generators. They also have batteries. And now, excuse me, for the generators, they're able to add fuel to those generators to keep them going. But if people are having issues with their cell phone service, that seems like something is going on. So we're looking into that tonight for you right now.
Exactly. We also have a verify, and look, understand that everyone's situation is different, but we did want to try to look into, from a broader perspective, what are some of the issues that people are having with cell towers, and would they be impacted in case the power goes out? Here is Jason Puckett now.
There are multiple comments online right now that look like this. Quote, your cell phone won't work if the power goes out at the cell towers, and it will. That claim sounds like common sense, right? If the cell towers lose power, they don't function. But that's not exactly true. In recent years, with fires across the state, the California Public Utilities Commission urged cell providers to put in backup power in high-risk locations, and some of them have already done that. When we reached out, a Verizon rep said many of their towers have backup generators that they will be refilling to keep service during the outages. T-Mobile also said they have generators and batteries to keep services online, as well as temporary generators they can move around. AT&T said they're they're working to deploy generators and equipment to keep customers connected and also opening unlimited talk, text, and data to users in the community. We haven't heard back from Sprint yet. Bottom line, don't just assume you won't have service. The idea that all cell towers will shut down without power is actually false. The major providers have generators and backup plans to keep service. And that's an important distinction. Without power and without service, people may be tempted to turn their phones off or put them in an airplane mode to conserve battery. Now that's still a good idea if you can't charge your phone, but also check periodically to see if you do have service and make sure there aren't any alerts or warnings for your area. If you're seeing any other claims out there, send us an email and we'll check them out. With your Verify, I'm Jason Puckett.
All right, so a lot now commenting more, saying that there's T-Mobile involved in this, also Verizon. Again, we are making some phone calls right now to figure out what's going on with these cell tower service issues that you all are experiencing right now. But we did also talk with some state officials earlier today about this issue, and they were saying that there is a plan in place for if and when the cell phone towers do go down because of the power shutoff. So this is what they had to say when we asked them, what is their plan in place?
Generally, cell towers by all providers have a battery capability for a length of time depending on the draw, but generally 8 hours plus. Most major cell components, the hubs overseeing the remote cell towers, have standby generation. The challenge...
And looking at the major hubs all running for 5 to 7 days, that's why they're bringing in convoys and also standby generation, because if those power outages withstand more than 5 days, they are then preparing for backup generators and also batteries. Now, also to keep AT&T and wireless and those prepaid customers, this is just for AT&T. They told us that they're going to be making sure that they're providing unlimited talk and text data access to all of their customers by issuing credits and waiving overage charges. Again, this offer is for customers based in 758 specific zip codes, and that runs from October 9th through October 13th. So again, that's just one statement from AT&T. We're working to get more information about Verizon and T-Mobile, also Sprint. So we are aware that this is impacting a lot of you. We're going to do our best to figure out what's going on with the cell phone tower situation, because this really is your lifeline when the power does go out, and we understand that. So Chris Thomas is now standing by again with Chris Vestal with Sac Metro Fire to talk about today. What have we seen today? And again, we have seen some fires break out, but firefighters were able to get control of them. Thank goodness, even though these winds are very serious right now.
And we do thank you for joining us. One of the things that we want to have you stress in your capacity as one of those folks who's out there on the grounds, that these are dangerous conditions.
They are very dangerous. We're looking through the North Operations Outlook for Northern California, which includes below 5,000 feet of elevation, very dry fuels. These fuels are at drought or near drought level conditions, and normally this time of year we would have already had a little bit more precipitation and a little bit more air moisture. So fuels are ready to burn and they will ignite.
As she mentioned, we have seen a few pop-up spots across the area with crews, but they were able to move in fast. It seems that you all have folks in place ready to tackle these fires if they pop up.
We do. We have our normal staffing, and at Metro Fire, that's about 36 fire engines with about 2/3 of those staffed with wildland units. But one of the things we do during these conditions where we have the north winds as well as the temperatures, we respond with extra units. We have a special red flag dispatch. So we send about twice as many apparatuses as we would normally send to any kind of vegetation fire or report. And that helps us get more units there quickly to suppress the fire.
And what about folks in Sacramento County? We have seen the conversation being, okay, well, maybe this is a foothill thing. Maybe this is not something that's really going to impact the valley that much. What's the takeaway? What should people keep in mind?
What we need to remember is that we have fine fuels like grasses and shrubbery. Those fuels dry out very quickly. They also die every season, so they don't have the ability to regain moisture once they're dead every year. At that point, they're only going to become drier as we move through the summer and into fall. Fall is actually our highest fire danger time of year in this region of California because it hasn't rained for the longest period of time. It's still warm. 70 degrees in any other part of the United States would still be pretty hot for a lot of people. So just because it's relatively cool for us doesn't mean that that fuel with the north winds and the low fuel moistures in the fuel that we can't burn.
The interesting thing you were telling me too is that you all prepared to fight this thing from the air and the ground.
We're lucky in this region. We have helicopters, we have bulldozers, and we have lots of different types of fire engines. We can get anywhere really quickly. We can also get there from the ground. We can get there from the air and our bulldozers can put a line around the fire when it will burn up to those lines and burn out if we can't get the ground resources in.
We are talking with Captain Chris Vestal from Sac Metro Fire. One of the things that we are trying to stress to folks is that even if they are not directly impacted, we are all indirectly impacted because you all are already sending crews out to assist in surrounding areas.
Overnight, we sent one bulldozer to St. Helena, and that's in Napa County, to pre-stage just in case a fire broke out there. And you see this throughout the state. We have incident management teams from the state of California that are pre-positioned right now. And the other thing that we did last night was we sent a strike team out to one of the fires in Mariposa. So just because there's not a fire in our area doesn't mean that we're not responding outside. But if we had a fire here, we're going to draw on those critical resources from outside of our area.
All right, Captain Chris Vestal, we thank you for this perspective. He's here. If you have questions, we'll try to get those answered. But for now, I'm going to send it back over to Madison and Mike.
All right, Chris, thank you. And thank you so much, Chris Vestal, for joining us. Obviously, having your perspective as a firefighter is huge when it comes to the red flag warning conditions we're following, just how windy and dry things are. Again, we had those fires that broke out earlier today. Daniela Pardo was there live in Rio Vista for us in Solano County talking to firefighters out there, but they got that quickly under control. And it was started with a little bit of an issue with a lawnmower, I believe, is what she was saying. So something to that effect. And therefore it can just be one spark, and that's what we don't want to see.
Right, it's that easy. And you know, also in that county, Fairfield, we were talking to today about their water concerns. So both ends of the spectrum here, and it's because they're lacking power in some parts of that area. Not all of it is affected, but one of their water purification systems had actually been impacted by that. So like I said, one of the areas experiencing that right now is Fairfield. And fortunately, it has a battery backup generator, but that means it's working at a reduced rate of about 50%. So city officials want everyone to know that the water is safe to drink, but they're asking residents to be mindful and to conserve water wherever possible. So today I spoke with Lieutenant Josiah Jacobson. He's with the Fairfield Police Department, and this is what he had to say.
The biggest part we would ask is your lawns, your landscaping, they'll survive. So please don't use water for landscaping. It's not something that's needed. Use it for what you need for cooking, cleaning, and things of that nature. And if everybody does that, that'll obviously change the amount of water that's being consumed, and that's the conservation that we just want everyone to try to think of.
Yeah, Madison, I thought that was really interesting because he said, you know, the city itself is not going to be watering the city property, and that's really going to make a difference. He said that kind of stuff will rebound, right? Which we think if you stop watering it, it'll be dead forever. But he said that that's something that they really need to do because you don't know how long this is going to last. That water purification system is already on a backup generator, which means that there's a lot of uncertainty in this equation. But he wanted to reassure the public it's safe. That should be fine. That's what they've prepared for. And a lot of cities are seeing something like this. They're not sure what they're going to expect going forward, but as of now, they're prepared for this scenario.
Right, absolutely. It's very interesting to see how much the loss of power affects every little bit of your facet of life, from water to traffic to filling up gas to just your normal day in, day out activities as well. We're going to now go up to Placerville because they haven't had electricity since last night. One of the first areas to lose power as we were live on the air telling you all what was going on around midnight last night. Maybe talk to the city manager up there about what they're going to deal with when these shutoffs happen to keep their community safe.
That's right. So I've been in Placerville since earlier this morning. It's been an eerie sight to see, almost apocalyptic. Everywhere you look, the lights are out. The gas station and most of the shops here on Main Street in the Old Town area are closed. I want to bring in Cleve Morris. He's the city manager for the city of Placerville. Now, I know the city has nothing to do with this shutoff. However, you guys are maintaining stability and keeping people safe.
Correct. We are doing what is necessary to keep as much on as we can. All of our utility services, water, sewer, etc., we have backup power on, and we're keeping those running. Transportation is a big issue for us, our street lights and etc. Most of our lights in town are functioning as four-way stops because of the power being out. We did work with PG&E and Caltrans to make sure that the lights on Highway 50 are remaining operational, because that's a huge traffic nightmare when that happens and pushes traffic over onto Main Street. So yeah, we are continuing to keep things going as the best we can.
And then I do understand that some of your city staff will have to be released early, possibly tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll play that by ear and see what is going on. As you know, in today's world, technology plays a big part. And if we don't have computers, one of our buildings, our city hall actually, does not have backup power on it, which is not critical to our operations, and that's why it doesn't. All of our others, police services, our town hall, public works, our wastewater plant, all have backup power. So in the case where, there's a lot of work we've done going into this to allow them to do filing and stuff that you don't need computers for, but eventually that comes to an end, and so we will evaluate as time goes on tomorrow and see what we need to do.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for your time. And coming up at 6, hear from some of the shop owners and how they're working through the shutoffs. Also, hear from some folks who are saying that actually these power shutoffs are actually good for their families because it's helping them disconnect from all the electronics and connect with each other. Reporting in Placerville, Mady Gomez, back to you guys.
Thanks so much. So what I was paying attention to today is all the different city services that are going to be delayed. And you don't think about that every day, but places like Nevada County, they said, all court operations would be suspended to next week. And that's a big deal. If you have your day in court and you were expecting it to happen, then all of a sudden it's delayed, that can cause quite a problem. And that's kind of what we're seeing around the area. People have to change their plans at the drop of a hat because they did not see this coming.
Absolutely. We do have a list of closures when it comes to schools, other businesses on our website, abc10.com, because that list is continuing to grow and change by the hour as we're hearing from different school districts as well impacted by this. We are working our best to keep that updated for you all because I know there's a lot of questions about, are the casinos open, the malls, what about this grocery store? Of course, if they all have backup generators, then those places should be up and running. But again, some businesses do not, and those are the ones that are suffering losses.
Yeah, and one of those businesses, or many of those businesses, gas, of course. You can't use those gas pumps if the electricity is not working, and that's something that a lot of people forget. So Carlos went out today and he examined what people need to know during this power shutoff.
I'm Carlos Herrera in Auburn, where tens of thousands of people are without power today. It was shut off by PG&E at midnight. It's causing all sorts of trouble for people who live here. Traffic on Highway 49 was at gridlock during the morning commute, making it a nightmare to get in and out of the city. All gas stations in the city are also closed, forcing commuters to drive 15 miles to Rockland to find the nearest open gas station. Definitely an inconvenience since more than half of the people who live here commute at least 20 miles to go to work.
I'm not even aware how far down the hill do you got to go to get power? How far down the hill do you got to go to get signal and make a phone call? It's pretty confusing, and we didn't get any warning. The first I heard about this was yesterday.
It's kind of a bummer because there is no gas stations open right now, so it's really an issue right now.
I'm kind of worried about food in the house because we got the kids. It's just the first of the month, got our budget done for food and try to figure something out. Honestly, I wouldn't have minded as long as we've gotten more notice. A day notice is just not enough.
Business owners were also left in the dark. The owner of the gas station on Highway 49 and Dry Creek Road loaded up his pickup truck with food, trying to keep it from going to waste. He expects to be without power for the rest of the week.
And with these shutoffs underway, we do have a tip for you. I think this will help some of you. Gas Buddy app is activating its fuel availability tracker in Northern California. This tracker helps drivers find gas stations that have electricity and fuel, pretty much find the gas stations that are operating during this entire power shutoff. All the app does is it differentiates which stations are without one or the other or both. So a tip for you when it comes to filling up your gas. I know we've seen some long lines at gas stations today.
That's right. Everywhere you go, you're going to see things like this happening, and you just don't know if you're going to run out of gas. Be on the safe side. Fill up when you can and make sure that you're at one of these places. I haven't even seen any place that we were talking about the potential of a manual pump yesterday, but I haven't seen that in recent times.
I haven't either, yeah.
We've gotten so complacent and everything relies on electricity. So why don't we turn it over now to Chris Thomas, who's standing by with what you can do to make sure that you're prepared.
I am here with Captain Chris Vestal from Sac Metro Fire. Captain, you had an interesting note to point out that you also are without power right now.
Right. So since about midnight last night, my power went out. And what that really drives home is that a lot of times in these urban areas like Sacramento, we're led to a false sense of security. We have tons of resources. We don't think we're in a wildfire area. And where I live in Placer County, it's the same thing. It's an urban, suburban area. So these aren't things that you typically think of, but you need to think about Ready, Set, Go. It's a program from CAL FIRE, and it's based on the fact that you need to get ready. So get things like generators, food, prepare prior to the incident occurring, whether it's an earthquake, a flood, or now our new disaster, the power shutoff. And then get set. Have all that stuff ready. Have it by your door, have it packed in your car, so that if you get the evacuation order, you're ready to go. Or in this case, if the power goes out, you're ready to go. You have the generator already plumbed into your house. You have your food that's not going to spoil, and your medical and medications are able to be properly taken care of as well.
Well, let's talk about that, because as we have been talking about folks' ability to use their phones, cell service, what are folks supposed to do in scenarios where you've got extended days where you don't have power and you depend on that for, say, your medical conditions? And two, how are folks to get alerts if they are without power?
So as a short-term power outage, most cell phone towers will work. They're either battery powered or they have generator power. But long-term power outages like we may be experiencing right now, some of those cell phone towers aren't going to work. The generators are going to run out of fuel and they're going to have problems refueling them, or the battery backup is going to go out. So what you really need to do is think about, if you're somebody who has special needs or might need special services, get yourself to an area where your cell phones will work, where you'll be able to request those and they'll be able to be fulfilled. The next thing is think about things that we just saw at gas. Fuel up your cars when these things are coming up, and not just because the power might get shut off, but because you might have to evacuate.
And the interesting thing is, you were saying with you're out, but you can look across the street and see others who do have power.
It's a little bit frustrating to look right outside your window and you see somebody off in the distance that has power. It's basically your same neighborhood, and you're thinking to yourself, this doesn't make sense.
Wow.
So looking at the PG&E map a few days ago, okay, I know I'm going to lose power, but everybody's going to lose power. Now, some of my neighbors a couple blocks over have power, so we're relying on them a little bit.
Wow.
At the same time, a few weeks ago, they were relying on me to give them some of their needs.
And so that was one of the things that we were seeing too, stressing that look out for your neighbors during this thing. We don't have a time frame for how long this is going to last, but we thank you for coming in to chat with us about some things that we can do right now to make sure that we are staying safe during what is practically a blackout.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
We're sending it back over to Mike and Madison.
All right.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take it from here. Yeah, thank you guys. All right, here's the look at how things are going to play out through the evening. Now, the key factor here is all about the winds. And as I've been monitoring these throughout the afternoon, it's really been shifting. Earlier today, it was really in extreme Northern California. Redding had close to a 50-mile-per-hour wind gust, and now everything's starting to migrate southward here. We're starting to see some of these contours pick up just a little bit more on the west side of the valley, and that is where we see some of this color difference that you'll see up here on the map. Keep an eye on that, because it will be shifting rather rapidly heading into about 9 to midnight, and then midnight to 2 a.m. So let's go ahead and fast forward right to that time frame there. And this is what we're going to be looking at here. You can see the winds are picking up hour by hour. And then as we hit about 2 a.m., 40 to 50 mile per hour winds right through that 80-50 corridor. This is going to be a focus of extreme fire danger. Headed off to the west, we see it in the western Sacramento Valley, 35 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts. And then as we get towards those North Bay Hills, 65 mile per hour winds potentially early tomorrow morning. Again, an overnight wind event. We've seen those been so destructive before in Northern California, particularly for the North Bay about 2 years ago when we had the North Bay fires. Heading into the morning, we're still looking at very gusty conditions towards the North Bay, as well as the foothills and through that 80-50 corridor, West Sacramento Valley as well. Winds sustained at about 15 to almost 25 miles per hour. That doesn't even account for the gusts that we'll see. And those gusts, that's something that we need to focus on as well, because they're erratic. They're not unidirectional, meaning they're not coming from a single direction. And if a fire is to start, those can be particularly hard for firefighters because they can't anticipate where those winds are going to be coming from or pushing the fire to. Winds start to back off as we head later into the afternoon. So far, as I've mentioned, wind gusts up to about 30 to 35 miles per hour towards extreme Northern California, closer to Redding. We've had wind gusts at about 45 to 50 miles per hour. Humidity very low, and we won't see much recovery overnight, meaning that humidity won't come up all too much. Because of the wind event that we're in, these are very dry winds, and they tend to accelerate fire growth, or they tend to accelerate downhill, meaning explosive fire growth. You can see we've got a high pressure ridge to the north of us. Low pressure system moved down to the south. That's what brought us that slight dip in temperatures over the past couple of hours. But as Chris Vestal was just mentioning, 70s by all accounts is still very warm. So even though we cooled off just a little bit, it's still warm for this time of year. As far as those Diablo and Santa Ana winds, that's what we're talking about here. Santa Ana winds down to the south of us in Southern California. Those develop heading into Thursday afternoon through Friday. North of that, we've got the Diablo winds. That's what we're going to be focusing on tonight through early tomorrow morning. And here's the key factors. They accelerate through the hills. Anybody that's driven over towards the coast knows how hilly it is, how windy it is to get over towards the coast. That's where those winds have to go as well. They dry and warm as they do so. This is all landmass. There is no moisture that they're going over, so they continue to dry as they make their way off the coast. And that's what can be potentially explosive fire growth. It can really take something and move it very quickly, meaning very hard to tackle. All right, as I mentioned, that fire danger is going to migrate southward heading into tonight. It started off very high in extreme Northern California. Now, again, when we look at the contours on this, the coloring, well, we've got a lot of coloring right here along I-80 just to the north, and then again, right around Santa Rosa. That's where we're going to see some of those strongest events happening. And then as we travel our way southward, that's where we get the extreme fire danger a little bit later on into our Thursday and Friday. All of this leading up to red flag warning conditions, which are already in effect and will continue through Thursday afternoon with gusty winds, low humidity. All of these areas must be ready to evacuate if needed. Wind advisory also in place, and that is going to be the strongest overnight, highest over the exposed ridges with the potential for rapid fire spread.
All right, Monica, thank you so much. And we did just learn that most of those Bay Area counties that we were talking about last night, we were aware they were part of phase 2. Right as we kind of wrapped up our coverage last night, we just learned that Alameda, Contra Costa, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz counties are now having their power shut off because of these large, widespread power shutoffs right now. So we just learned that from PG&E within the last couple minutes.
It just goes to show you that this is still an ongoing event, and it's having impacts all across our area. As a matter of fact, things were just flying off the shelves in Vacaville at their Walmart and Target. They even ran out of ice and water at the Walmart.
Oh, believe it or not, they did. Yeah, and Arlena Howland was there earlier today talking to people about how they're dealing with all of this.
As thousands in Vacaville woke up without power, some searched for outlets and bathrooms.
It's just eerie out.
Valerie Nelson found relief at the Vacaville Community Resource Center set up at the Mission Church.
I feel good about it because looking at what happened in Paradise, you know, these narrow roads and trees that were right up to the roads, they're an accident ready to happen.
While others rushed to the store to stock up on non-perishables.
The first 2 stores I went to by my house are both closed, Walmart being one of them. So I'm here and getting what I need. Hope it just gets us through the next few days, and we'll see how long it takes for everything to get back on.
This Walmart is one of the few still open, but some were turned away when they ran out of essentials like water and ice.
And we got a bunch of just snacks and goodies, popcorn and Capri Sun juices for him, beef jerky for my husband, just a bunch of goodies so we can go to the hotel, watch TV, snack, and make the best of it.
Quinn Colvin was one of the first to lose power just after midnight last night, but she's making the best out of the situation and taking the family to a hotel for at least the night.
So yeah, it's frustrating, but what are you gonna do? You know, it doesn't make any sense to be all upset and up in arms about it. It's not going to change the situation, so.
Some perspective there from people who really are dealing with the power shutoffs tonight. Again, more than 800,000 customers with PG&E, and we just learned of more counties that are going to be having their power shut off, if not already have their power shut off right now.
Alameda, Contra Costa, San Mateo, Santa Clara, and Santa Cruz counties are having their power shut off now. This is part, again, of phase 2, according to PG&E. PG&E has established an alternate website for customers to check their address for possible impact by a power shutoff. That's one thing that we have to talk about, because yesterday we saw where they were having up and down power issues with their website, and so what they did was they set up a separate website now for people to go to if they need information. Do you all have that website? Have they tweeted it out yet? Is that something that we can share with folks here on this? She's pulling that up now, and we'll get that to you all, because if you want to get things like maps, if you want to get the latest updates, they have set up a separate website from their main website, if you will, to kind of relieve some of the traffic that they were dealing with, and that way, hopefully, that will try to make sure that people are getting the information they need when they need it. The last thing you want to do is run into an issue where you cannot get information in this particular incident, when people are dealing with what is essentially a blackout across much of our area. As we're waiting for that update on the PG&E website, we want to talk about schools as well, Madison.
Yeah, we do have some school closures to make note of right now. Some are saying they will be closed tomorrow now, again, because this is extending more than just 24 hours. There will be no classes at Folsom Lake Community Colleges in Placerville at their campus there. Also, Esparto Unified School District schools are also closed tomorrow. We are updating this list as things change, as we get more information about schools that are being closed. We will continue to update that, and that list is online again at abc10.com.
Okay, and we want to remind people during an outage, PG&E says you need to unplug and turn off appliances in your home. Before that outage, confirm or update your contact information with PG&E, and then create a safety plan for family and pets. I always want to stop down when we get to this point when we're talking about a safety plan for your family and pets, because it's not just what you're doing there at home. It's also you making a plan for how you would get out of your neighborhood, what happens if an area is blocked, what happens if there are firefighters or fire crews who are directing you out of your normal entrance to a different way. You want to make sure that you have plans for how to get out of your neighborhood if you're forced to evacuate, and you need a plan A, B, and C if you can do it. Prepare an emergency kit that includes food and water. You want to keep your phones and your devices charged. We know that's hard to do when you don't have power. Some people were talking about, your car phone chargers. You can go sometimes out in the car and just charge it if you're going to work or things like that, to at least maybe help to get some charge there. Some other things you want to keep in mind: if you have a generator, make sure it works properly. There have been conversations, and we've seen cases too, where people have been impacted when something happened or when something went awry with their generator. Learn how to manually open your garage. Don't get stuck in the garage. I tell you, this is something that we have seen happen before as well. People get outside and then they cannot get out of the garage because they have lost power to their homes. Keep a battery powered radio. Folks don't, used to have that all the time.
Right.
But nowadays, people depend on their phones so much for everything. And then, of course, keep cash on hand and a full tank of gas. I think we're going to try to go over to Mike now.
Yeah,
who's
because
going to give us an update, right?
Updates on the outages. What areas are now affected now that we know that there were 4 additional counties added to the list tonight? So Mike, bring us up to speed.
Yeah, Madison and Chris, so a lot of those counties that you had talked about, phase 2, have to do with places in the Bay Area. So this week's the 2-year anniversary of the Tubbs fire. But before I get to that, let me show you this map that I'm looking at right now. In our immediate area, there are about 16 counties. So I really want to focus on those. And if you look at the top right of your screen, essentially, that's where we're most concerned about tonight. And as you go south, basically when you start up near Chico, that's really where we see our area begin. And as we're moving south, you can see more and more of these counties that are affected. Let me just pull up here some of the numbers that I had for you guys. Just 1 minute, my prompter went down here, so I'm just going to pull that up right now. These areas right now have about 275,000 customers who are without power. And this map that you're looking at right now is a Google Earth map. So let's start at the top and work our way down to the right. The blue band, like you see on your screen, it starts with Sierra through Plumas. So Sierra, Nevada, Placer, El Dorado, Amador, Calaveras, and Tuolumne counties. Those counties are most affected, of course. Those ones are Nevada, Placer, and El Dorado, who have the most people without power. Also take a look at the left side of your screen. This is more that Bay Area, but in our viewing area, so if you're watching this now, includes you. These areas include Colusa, Yolo, and especially Solano County, which has about 32,000 customers without power tonight. It's a really massive area. I don't know if we can pull up the other graphic that we had for you, but it just gives you a better idea about the numbers. If we can switch over to that, let's see if we can pull that up for you. All right, we don't have that at the moment. But like we were talking about, Madison and Chris, the other counties, part of phase 2, have more to do with the Bay Area. And we've just been getting these updates. So why don't I send it back to you guys and we can try to get an update on that. I know it's Alameda, Contra Costa, San Mateo, Santa Clara, and Santa Cruz counties that are really seeing those new numbers tonight.
Okay, we'll come back as things merit, Mike, because this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to work you through information as it comes in. This is an active, developing story throughout the night, and we plan to be here giving you as many updates as we possibly can through this. Talk to us back there in the studio. Let us know where you want to go next, and what we will do as we are working through that. We are going to make sure that you understand that they are setting up resource centers for you even as we speak. I have an update also from Auburn Police. They are doing extra patrols tonight in areas where the power is out. The police department says they are also seeing an increase in erratic driving. So they want people to know just because the power is out, it does not mean it's start driving crazy. Well, this is not the time to do that.
In Sonoma County, we were seeing a couple of their tweets today that there were a lot of car accidents. And it's no laughing matter, no joke here that people need to treat every single intersection as a four-way stop and be mindful of that. That just because the power is out doesn't mean you need to speed up. Slow down, take it slow, realize that the power is out, and just, again, be mindful of that as we continue through the night. But we want to get things over to Monica now because, again, the winds are picking up as we speak.
Yeah.
What's in the prompter?
You're right about that. Yeah, Briceburg fire. We've been following that. It's close to Yosemite. This just illustrates how those winds are causing problems for fires that already exist. Right now, that's over 4,000 acres. Evacuations are now being called for. That's over towards the Yosemite area in Mariposa County. But again, the Briceburg fire, it has been burning and now it's getting a bit worse. They're having a tougher time containing them. Taking a look at the current winds, they're at about 15 to 20 miles per hour through the valley. What you'll notice here is we're starting to see a bit of a shift in our contours, our coloring up on this map. Earlier today, it was really concentrated on the west side of the valley. Now we're starting to see a bit more move over towards the North Bay Hills, as well as towards the foothills and the Sierra. We've had horrible problems with air quality in the San Joaquin Valley. Dust blowing around. Some farmers are still harvesting some of those tomatoes. We're getting ready for harvesting the grapes. Kevin's sending that in. Air quality alert for the San Joaquin Valley all the way over towards Fresno, parts of the Mother Lode, and the foothills as well. You're advised to stay indoors and avoid extended activity outside. All right, so let's take a look at the winds and how they will shift throughout tonight. Again, the focus areas that we're going to be looking at that haven't been particularly hard hit right now are going to start to be harder hit tonight through early tomorrow morning. We want to look at the contours. Where are we going to see the yellows, the reds, the purples almost here? And that's going to be for the foothills, that 80-50 corridor, west side of the valley, and again, the North Bay Hills. As we head into about the 2 o'clock hour in the morning, this is when we're really going to hear those winds howling. Right around the 40 to 50 mile per hour mark, north of Highway 50, north of I-80, all the way through that corridor there. And then towards the west side of the valley, on the west side of the Sacramento River, 35 to 40 mile per hour winds. That will extend all the way through Fairfield, Vacaville, Dixon, Davis, even up towards Esparto, and then towards the North Bay Hills. Around the Santa Rosa area, we see a couple of pockets here. Ridges are going to be especially hard hit. 65 mile per hour winds potentially early tomorrow morning. They'll continue at that pace until about 7 a.m. As we head through the rest of the day, winds will start to back off, but that doesn't mean we're out of the danger zone yet. Peak wind gusts for today about 35 miles per hour through most of the valley, even higher gusts north of us. They've been closer to about 45 to 50 miles per hour near Redding. And all of that starts to migrate southward throughout tonight. That's the kind of wind conditions that we're looking for heading into the overnight hours. As far as humidity, we've been talking about this. 75, 80 degrees isn't particularly that hot, but for this time of year, those types of temperatures are just going to continue to dry everything out that's already so dry. We haven't had significant rain since May of this year. Humidity right now coming up slightly from where we were earlier today, 15 to 30%. We would expect a bit better recovery, though, at this point in the evening, and it's just not going to happen. In fact, we're not expecting much, if any, humidity for tonight. Low pressure system that brought a bit of the cooling now heads south. High pressure moving in. We get those offshore winds, gusts 50 to 65 miles per hour, and extremely high fire danger. And here's why. We call these winds, those offshore winds, in the northern part of the state near Santa Rosa, Diablo winds. In the southern part of the state, you may be a bit more familiar with that. Santa Ana winds. Those are offshore winds. They accelerate through the hills. So if there's any fires that start, it will carry that in a very fast pace with dry and warm conditions, resulting in explosive fire growth. So as far as today, highest fire danger was north of us. Now it starts to move south. These are the forecast models that we're looking at. Tomorrow morning, it is concentrated again, 80-50 corridor towards the North Bay Hills and the west side of the valley. You can see how we're starting to see a lot of extreme fire behavior potentially in the western part of at least our area. Now, as we head through the afternoon, we'll continue to see that a possibility, but all of this starts to move its way southward into Southern California when the Santa Ana winds pick up. This is a statewide event. Everybody's on high alert right now for the possibility because of what's happened in previous years. October, November have historically been extremely destructive in terms of fire behavior. Red flag warning in effect through 5 p.m. tomorrow. Be ready to evacuate anybody in this red zone right here. And then as we look at that wind advisory also in place, that will continue through tomorrow. We're talking about highest winds over the exposed ridges and also rapid fire spread. We saw some of those grass fires. So just because we don't live in terrain that is rocky or hilly or curvy doesn't mean we can't see the fires, because obviously over towards Rio Vista, we have that grass fire that broke out. It spread pretty quickly, but they got containment pretty quickly as well. They got right on it. So that's a look at our wind conditions as we head towards tonight. But Chris and Madison, you know, I was telling everybody here today, I said we got to be on this between midnight tonight and 2 a.m. That's going to be the tough time.
Yeah, we're not stop following this for you as things progress and the winds continue to pick up. Really a stark reminder to 2 years ago of yesterday. So again, October 2017 was the last time PG&E says they saw winds of this magnitude, of this destructive, with fires that we were dealing with in the North Bay.
That's right. This is the two-year anniversary of the Tubbs fire that devastated wine country. Our Lilia Luciano went to Santa Rosa to see how folks are doing 2 years later. She spoke to the CAL FIRE chief, who is from Coffey Park, and responded to the Tubbs fire. Today, he responded to another fire near Santa Rosa. Take a listen.
We're in the town of Occidental in Sonoma County. This is about 20 minutes west of Santa Rosa. Brian, can you tell me what's happened here today?
Yeah, we're dispatched for a vegetation fire here in Occidental, right here in town on the outskirts. And we had engines get here pretty quickly, held it to about 1 acre.
Okay.
Made a good
small.
stop, very
That's
small.
good.
It's steep, as you can see. It's a good stop. We have a lot of people staffed up right now in preparation for the winds.
I heard that there were air crews that came in and were released. Was that what stopped it initially, or was it the ground
They
crews?
help. They give us eyes on it, and we'll
Okay.
lay retardant across the head of it to slow it down.
Do we know what started it?
No, it's under investigation.
Okay, I'm not seeing it. At least I'm not seeing any power lines.
There's no power lines that I see overhead.
It is 2 years to the day, or to the day after the beginning of the Tubbs fire. Do you work that fire? What do you remember?
Yeah,
about
we
2 years
were,
ago?
me and all my coworkers were there that night. Same predictions as tonight. You just never know if it's going to surface, and it did surface. And the wind blew hard. Yeah, I grew up in Coffee Park.
Oh, you did?
And
Wow.
a lot of my friends lost their homes, and I was right there when it happened. I've got 20 years in now, and been to a lot of fires, seen a lot of destruction and sadness, but once it was in my own hometown, it did change things a bit, knowing whose houses were burning. And you reach a point, though, where you don't really care about property. You just hope everyone's okay. That's all that really matters. You can always rebuild. But we like to win as firefighters, and that was a hard one because it didn't feel like we were winning at first, but we got it eventually, and it's just one of those things you can't predict it. You just can try your best and keep a good attitude, and pray everybody's safe.
That's the thing. We know a lot of folks got some attitudes going. And look, I mean, we know it's stressful. It is a stressful time. But know that everyone is working and doing the best that they can to try to help during these conditions. You've got our firefighters. You've got the PG&E workers who are out. We had an incident where one of their trucks was shot at just last night. And PG&E was asking people to please understand that these folks are just doing their job. A lot of this stuff is much above their pay grade. They're just doing some of the decisions that have been made from much higher than themselves. But this is a time of year. It is the most dangerous time of year for so many people in California because of these winds, because of these red flag warnings that we start to see, and because things are just so dry. One of the things that we've been doing as part of our series, The New Normal, and it's really not a stretch to say that, is we've been taking a look back. At what people have been experiencing, hearing from first responders and seeing their views of the fires as they tried to rescue people, Madison.
Yeah, and so here's a look back at the North Bay fires that happened in 2017.
Sheriff's office! You couldn't see anything. It was like a wall. Fire!
Block after block after block of destroyed neighborhoods.
God damn.
Oh my God. This was like Armageddon. It was a normal Monday for me, which was be a Sunday. Sunday was my Monday night, and got ready to go to work. I think my wife was on the freeway at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and texted me a message saying it's super, super windy. And
I remember that evening, that afternoon, it was definitely, you could feel it was dry, you could feel it was warm, breezy, kind of an eerie feeling.
About 8:30, noticed the wind's picking up, the fire department's just getting dispatched to little fires here and there.
And my work phone was just going off with incident after incident.
Around 9:30, 2 of our deputies got dispatched to Highway 128 to the Napa County line to help with traffic control on a fire.
At the same time, there was the equivalent of a third alarm fire in downtown Santa Rosa. So around 10:45, I put on my uniform, got in my work truck at home, and drove into Santa Rosa.
I kind of started hearing scanner traffic about a fire, and then literally within minutes, our sergeant was saying, we need to all go up there and start evacuations.
That fire would become the Tubbs Fire. The next several hours would unfold as a chaotic race against time and nature.
Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, mandatory evacuation order, leave your homes.
And then essentially started working our way back down towards Santa Rosa, knocking on doors.
It's time to go, like right now.
Telling people you need to leave. How much time do we have? The fire's literally 100 yards away. You have no time.
We need to go. Hey, firm, we got to keep pushing the evacuations as far west as we can.
I just left my siren on and just got on my PA system and just started yelling, this is the fire department, you need to evacuate. This is the fire department, you need to evacuate immediately.
Go! Go!
People yelling or screaming.
Okay, you go get your keys. I'll get her downstairs. Come on, ma'am.
Oh my God.
I know, this is sad.
Oh my God.
Let's stay right here until he gets the keys. You're fine, you're fine.
Is our house on fire?
You know, essentially you're being chased by the fire. The winds, I've never seen anything like that. 60, 70 miles an hour. Watching embers the size of basketballs blow sideways across the highway.
I copy. George 4, start that direction, Ocean.
Around this time, residents in Santa Rosa's Coffee Park neighborhood began waking up.
A bunch of other neighbors came and were like just standing in the middle of the street, and one of our neighbors came running around the corner as fast as she could, and she was just like, hop the 101, hopper's on fire, get out, get out, get out. And we didn't say another word to each other. It was like a second of stunned silence, and then we just ran into our homes and started to evacuate.
On the other side of town, Deputy Aldridge was helping an elderly couple evacuate their home in the hills.
All right, let me get her feet, let me get her feet.
So I went to the house, elderly couple, helped them get their cats. We threw them in their car.
Stand for, we're doing a carry out. Ready?
They started the drive back down.
Mark West is nearly impassable at this point.
And my sergeant, who had the body camera footage, told me that the road is impassable. Turned around with about, by this time, I'd probably 3 or 4 cars behind me, maybe 5. I told them to everybody turn around, and we went back to the Mark West Lodge, which is literally the only place.
So what you're telling me is that in that moment while you were trying to evacuate people, you yourself got trapped.
Yep. Told dispatch, I'm stuck. I got like 3 dozen people with us, and we just waited.
Oh, don't hit me. God damn it. I gotta get out of here. I'm in a bad spot. Ooh.
The fire now fully engulfing entire neighborhoods in Santa Rosa.
It was like we flipped the switch and tried to evacuate upwards of 100,000 people in hours.
Some of our neighbors were going door to door, banging on people's doors, waking them up. One of my neighbors evacuated in only his boxers.
Neighbors became first responders.
Santa Rosa city bus drivers also jumped into action, evacuating hundreds of people, including many elderly at senior living centers. As they drove through Coffee Park, those passengers seeing flames on either side.
You know, I remember driving and visibility going to nothing.
It looked like charcoal briquettes or like golf ball-sized embers would hit in the middle of the street and just start blowing down the middle of the street.
I mean, were you ever in this situation where you thought you guys weren't going to get out?
The fire came within about 100 yards of the lodge. That was probably the only time I go, I don't know, crap moment. Other than that, the fire pretty much burned around us. But you can hear trees exploding, propane tanks exploding, you know. And the hardest part is just being light with everybody, you know. I mean, trying not to, you know, you got to keep them calm.
Finally, morning.
I drove through Coffee Park Monday morning, and it was like, holy crap. It's like a different word I had, but there was devastation. Then my wife tells me Kmart burned. Excuse me? How the hell did that store burn?
We decided to come in the back way and made our way in, and that's when we just saw everything. And so we just stood in the top of our driveway and just looked at the nothingness that was there and cried. And
When you left that night, did you have any sense that you would never be returning to your home?
No, not at all. I put on my uniform and got in my work truck and didn't take anything else beyond that, thinking I'll be back by the next morning if at the worst case scenario.
Paul Lowenthal was one of 7 firefighters with the Santa Rosa Fire Department to lose his home that night. But that wasn't the focus for any of them.
Realized right away that it's gone, and then immediately shifted gears and then continued on for the rest of that night.
The Tubbs fire alone burned nearly 37,000 acres between Calistoga and Santa Rosa. It destroyed more than 5,600 structures and took the lives of 22 souls.
It was a pretty intense night.
What are you most proud of from that night?
Living, not dying. What everybody did. No questions, they just did it.
For so many, the recovery has not been easy. But now, more than a year later, rebuilding is finally underway.
What do you think of the progress? A year later, would you have expected more to be done?
I mean, there's still people that are living in hotels. There's still people that are couch surfing and can't get past the mental block of rebuilding because it's too hard to revisit. So it's really hard to gauge where it should and shouldn't be just based on that fact, but I think we're in a great spot.
A little over a year later now, how is the department doing?
Good, but there's been times, you know, I walk outside and I get nervous, but you shake it off and go to work. It was definitely something I don't want to do again. I'll put it to you that way. Once in a lifetime is enough.
And if you all are just now joining us, we are live continuing our breaking news coverage of the PG&E power shutoffs affecting so many people, millions of people in Northern California tonight. We are going to be live for the next several hours, bringing you all the latest information you need to know.
And here's the deal. PG&E launched a new website due to the high volume of traffic. It is random. So there you see it there on your screen. storymaps.arcgis.com/stories/ and there you see the number there. So make sure you take that down. That is the website that they have put in place for people to get information for only shutoff related things. Right now, only letting people know about shutoffs. 24 hours, they'll add when power is expected to be back on in counties and things like that. So they need at least 24 hours, they're saying, to be able to determine how soon the power may come back on. But that is the very latest information. They have set up this website. We know that's it there on the bottom of your screen. It's a lot to try to take down, get numbers and all, but that is what you need to know for the very latest information on the shutoff, specifically because the website was crashing with so many people trying to get information.
Right, and that's why they were turning to Twitter. They still are tweeting as much as they can in terms of what you need to know as these power shutoffs continue to happen. A lot of people wondering when the power is going to be turned back on. At this time, we don't know. And in fact, counties are still turning power off at this hour. We just learned of several more counties in the Bay Area turning their power off. They shut off power to more than 500,000 customers at midnight. Then round 2 of those shutoffs, which were supposed to happen at noon, they were then delayed due to weather conditions. But those happened around 7 o'clock tonight is when we got the word from PG&E that the second round was going to happen. Now, I wonder tonight, though, with the latest round in the Bay Area, if that's phase 3.
Right. That's one of the main things that they were trying to work through, just how long these phases would last and how many people would be impacted. Remember, they're saying as many as 800,000 customers could be impacted here. So let's head over to Mike Duffy with what we know so far about the shutoffs and who it is impacting.
Yeah, Chris Madison. So a lot of people want to know how many people are affected and what areas are the most affected. So let's talk about our immediate viewing area here. So if you're watching this, you are part of that viewing area. Well over 275,000 customers right here in the 16 county area are without power tonight. And the counties in the Sierra foothills are seeing the most impact. So I want to show you a graphic that we created to give you a better sense of the numbers. Just a brief view here. You can see most of those counties in the Sierra are the ones who are obviously hit the hardest. Nevada, which has over 43,000 customers without power tonight. Placer, which has over 51,000 customers tonight. And El Dorado has the same amount. Over 51,000 customers are dark tonight. Solano County has over 30,000, and Tuolumne has over 34,000 customers who are affected by those outages. You can also see on this graphic that Calaveras County has over 23,000 customers. So now let's also take a look at a Google Earth map that we've been looking at. We definitely were checking it out last night, and we've been showing it to you because this gives you a really good idea of where those communities exist. So let's start with that blue band that you see on the right side of your screen. Those are the communities that are in the Sierra. And it's the area of most concern. The most people are affected. So it really starts in Butte County, and near Chico is up at the top. Actually, the very top is the Redding area, but just below that to the right, that's where what I'm talking about there. So that's the Sierra, and starts at Plumas, Sierra County, Nevada County, Placer County, El Dorado County, Amador, Calaveras, and then Tuolumne is most of where you see at the bottom of the right of your screen there. And the areas that are most impacted right there are Nevada, Placer, and El Dorado County. You saw about 40, 50, and 51. So also take a look at the left side of your screen. That's also part of our viewing area. And this area includes Colusa, Yolo, and especially Solano County. That's the one on the left side of your screen, which has actually seen the most. 32,000 customers are without power tonight. So It's a massive area. This entire power outage is covering part of just about every county in Northern California. And Chris and Madison, this gives everyone an idea of just how extraordinary the number of people who are impacted tonight are.
Indeed. And I know we are getting several questions on Facebook tonight. We want to try to answer some of those. Madison.
Yeah, we've gotten several of the similar questions. We do know a lot of you are dealing with issues when it comes to your cell phone service provider. We're talking about AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon. So of course we are looking into that. But what we do know is that the cell towers, they do have backup generators and they're able to refuel those generators. They also have batteries. So we're working to figure out what's going on exactly with some of those people who are having issues with their cell phone service tonight. But we were talking to state officials earlier today and they said that they do have a plan in place. So we're not exactly sure at the moment what's going on, but we are making calls to figure that out for you all. We also have a couple more people asking about, if people are going to get reimbursed for the loss of food.
Right.
And PG&E has a comment on that too.
Dr. Barbara Stewart says, who's going to pay for my loss of food? And we had a spokesperson from PG&E write in to tell us, told our Kevin John today that they typically do not reimburse for loss of food, but a claim can be filed. Each claim is treated on a case-by-case basis, and that isn't just Barbara who's raising that. We've seen several people say, well, are they going to pay for our loss of food? We're hearing from parents who were saying it's the first of the month, and they had kind of went out and bought groceries for their children and for the family, and that they may now be at a loss. And so, again, our Brandy Merlot from PG&E telling our Kevin John tonight that they typically do not reimburse for loss of food, but a claim can be filed and that each claim will be treated on a case-by-case basis.
We've also had a couple people ask if they're going to be charged with PG&E during this power shutoff, and the answer to that is no. At this time, PG&E will not be charging customers when the power is shut off. That's a new thing from PG&E.
Say that again,
we were
Madison.
just wondering. Yeah, so that's what.
Because that's a big question.
It is a big
People are saying, well, are you going to still bill me for this time that I don't have any power?
Right, and that's what PG&E was saying earlier today. So again, we are really working on figuring out more about the cell phone service issue. It looks like a couple more questions we have on here are mostly about those, and we are wondering. Some people are wondering rather, when is power going to be turned back on? Because there's been
time frame.
Right, we haven't been given a time frame. But again, that website that we put up on the screen there for you is really the place to be checking that right now. In case you can, if you don't have cell phone service, we hear you. We can help, obviously, but that's going to be where you can check to see when and if and when they're going to update you on when the power will be turned back on.
And I know many people have been saying, well, what is the governor saying about this? How is he weighing in? What does he want to see happen here? We actually heard from him today. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
My kids are at home right now. I want them in school. I've got a bunch of businesses that are impacted, and I want to, I'd rather criticize Donald Trump than act like him talking about my businesses in Northern California, but we're in the middle of wine crush, and folks are running around trying to get generators right now in the middle of crush. I mean, it's very consequential. And by the way, I'm outraged because it didn't need to happen. Didn't need to happen if you had a investor-owned utility was making kind of investments that your investor-owned utility was making down here, and focusing on modern transmission lines, and focusing on modern ways of turning on and off lights that wouldn't be disruptive in the aggregate to 1 million or 2 million people, as it potentially may impact over the next 24 to 48 hours. So it was unnecessary. They're in bankruptcy because of their terrible management going back decades. They've created these conditions. It was unnecessary. We're doing everything in our power, my gosh, doing everything in our power to help them help themselves. Now it's time for them to do the right thing and get out of bankruptcy and get this system to the 21st century.
Some tough talk there from the governor telling them to, quote, do the right thing, get out of bankruptcy, and bring their system up to the 21st century. The thing that is just mind-boggling, when you have California, the 5th largest economy in the world, to find themselves in a place where you're having rolling blackouts because of high winds, it is quite the commentary for conditions even as we speak. And so let's get over to Monica, Chief Meteorologist Monica Woods, because she has been tracking conditions even as we speak, Monica.
And things are starting to change. Currently, we have winds still at about 15 to 20 miles per hour in the valley, but one area that I'm starting to see pop up with a bit more activity is just north of Highway 50. You can can see this contour right here, more in the orange. That's showing that we are starting to see some winds increasing right at that location. Now, many people in the foothills and parts of the Sierra are without power right now. Unfortunately, that's probably going to stay the case with these winds starting to pick up in that region. We're also going to be focusing over towards the North Bay area, where we're expecting those winds to also be most problematic overnight tonight through early tomorrow. So here's a look at our future winds. This is what the weather models are forecasting for us as we head into tonight and early tomorrow morning. And this is the time frame that we were expecting to have the worst case scenario. So here we are at 9 p.m. and again, just north of Highway 50, we are currently seeing that development right there with some stronger winds. As we head into the midnight hour and just after that, this is when things really start to change. Look at how this map starts to light up with color all through the 80-50 corridor. 40 to 50 mile per hour winds all throughout that region. That includes some of the upper foothills, the lower Sierra. And then as we head just west of the valley, this region here has been especially hard hit for today. We already had that small brush fire that broke out earlier today, a grass fire near Rio Vista, near Highway 12, and then over towards the North Bay Hills. This is where we also start to see a lot of these color contours developing here with 65 mile per hour winds potentially by about 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, lasting until about 7 a.m. That's going to be the time that we have that morning commute. I don't know how many of you were on the roads this morning, but it was a mess. It seemed like winds were really already causing a problem with a bit of debris from time to time crossing the roadways. Be aware. Pretty much the same situation that we're heading into for tomorrow. Some of that debris, especially the trees, the branches, the leaves, were coming down today, but we're going to have additional impacts for tonight into tomorrow morning. Be prepared for a slow commute possible for that Thursday morning. And again, wind's a huge part of that. They will start to taper off. They'll back off by the afternoon and evening hours, but it's not going to be as soon as the winds back off, we're going to have the power turned back on. PG&E has already been saying it could be days until we assess all the power lines. Wind gusts so far today, and these are the peak wind gusts over the past 24 hours, have been upwards of 30 miles per hour. Just to the north of Oroville and closer to about Chico and Redding, even Red Bluff, we were seeing wind gusts at about 45 to almost 50 miles per hour. But I did do some tracking, and over towards St. Helena, we even got a wind gust close to about 50 miles per hour as well. There have been short periods of time when those wind gusts have been popping up much stronger than the sustained winds. And again, those can be so erratic, it's very hard to predict where anything is headed if there were a fire to break out. As far as our humidity, it's still very low. Fairfield, 9% right now. Sacramento, 18%. These are very low for this time of the evening. Santa Rosa is starting to come up right now, close to 50%, but we have yet to really see those big Diablo winds pick up. I'm going to show you how that's going to change overnight. We're only at about 30% for the foothills and parts of the Sierra. Again, very low for this point of the evening. Here's the setup. Low pressure system that delivered the clouds yesterday, the cooler weather for today, now starting to position itself just to the south of us and off to the east. Replacing it is a high pressure ridge. So we get the offshore winds developing tonight through early tomorrow morning. Why are those so dangerous? Well, here's why. As we zoom in just a little bit closer, we look at two specific areas because these are going to be the winds that we're going to be looking at, not only for tonight, tomorrow, but even into Friday. All right, let me explain when those time frames are going to be happening. First, we're looking at Diablo winds for tonight. Those are going to be the ones in Northern California, specifically the North Bay Hills. Those are going to accelerate down the hill. They're going to be dry, warm with the potential for explosive fire behavior. That's what we had 2 years ago, almost to the date, for those North Bay fires. Now we focus on the southern part of the state. Those are the Santa Ana winds. That will also be part of the forecast and part of the fire impacts throughout the state heading into our late work week forecast. For tonight and early tomorrow, the big focus is going to be right here to the east, to the west, because of everything that's happening right now. That shift in our upper air movement is going to deliver those offshore winds. So you can see how some of the most extreme fire behavior has the potential to be right in that 80-50 corridor, specifically right along Highway 50, and then also along I-80, the west side of the valley, stretching over towards the Bay Area in those North Bay Hills, right around Santa Rosa, Coffee Park, Roanoke Park as well. Then as we head into late Thursday through Friday, all of this moves into Southern California. Everybody in the Golden State on high alert for possible high fire danger. Our red flag warning, that's in effect until 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, with the gusty winds and low humidity. And everyone in this zone has to be prepared to evacuate. As I mentioned, near Rio Vista, we had that grass fire. That's not in the hills, that's in the lower elevations. But everything is so dried out at this point. It doesn't take much to get something spreading pretty quickly. And that could have been started by some lawn equipment, some farm equipment. Doesn't take power lines. It can be anything. All right. Strong wind event also in place here throughout the valley. The foothills with our wind advisory in place through tomorrow. Highest overexposed ridges with the rapid fire spread in any of these areas. And of course, everything is blowing around. We have some poor air quality. So air quality alert for the San Joaquin Valley. Just be aware if you have breathing problems, it's going to be best to keep it indoors here for the next couple of days. Chris and Madison.
All right, Monica, thank you so much. And PG&E also is helping people during this with some resource centers that have been opening up in communities that have lost power. Take a look at your screen right now. These are places that are open from 8 in the morning until 6 at night, places to charge your phones, get some AC. They do have room for 100 people at each location, and they will be again open from 8 in the morning to 6 at night for as long as these outages last. We have the full list of locations. We're talking about dozens of locations here. Some for some counties, there's 2 per county. We have that full list on abc10.com.
And we are taking your questions tonight as well. I see you, Candace, and I see you, Amanda. We thank you so much for joining us on our live conversation here. Trying to answer some of these main questions that we are getting. Our web producer was just telling me they have put together a list of frequently asked questions on abc10.com. You can go there to get answers to some of those questions. I'll try to run through some of them for you now. How will emergency services work if the power is going to be out for days?
Right. That's a really good question.
Well, we're told that places need power, places like hospitals, police stations, and fire stations, they will have backup generators, and those places will be operating as close to normal as possible, okay? The other question, this is something that you ran into personally just over the weekend. Why can't I get gas at the gas station? Ironically, gas stations do not run on gas. They run on electricity. With power outages, some gas stations will not be able to open. You were saying you were just in location this weekend.
That just happened to me this weekend in Mammoth. They had also a power outage down there with the Edison Electric Company in more Southern California area, just different from PG&E, but same situation. High fire risk, high winds. They therefore shut down the power for the whole entire area, and therefore I could not get gas without paying cash, and also it was the old school fill it up with a gallon of gas on the side, like you would do on the side of the road if your car was not working, right? So that's the situation. Some gas stations we've seen on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, our reporters were at gas stations today, long lines, some people waiting hours to get gas. So of course right now, if you're running a little bit low, it may be best to look at that outage map and see which areas do have power, which areas are not part of this power shutoff, to then maybe go check out which gas stations are available. Gas Buddy, we also have a link to that where you can see which gas stations are operating right now, where you can go get gas, and therefore you won't have to be stuck in a situation where your car runs out of gas and you don't know where to go, and then maybe your phone doesn't work. So we're trying to help as much as we can.
The other question, do traffic lights still work during a power outage? No. In areas where power is shut off, traffic lights may not be working, so drive carefully. As a matter of fact, police in Auburn, they are doing extra patrols tonight in areas where the power is out. The police department says they are also seeing an increase in erratic driving. They want folks to know, slow down because the power is out. This does not mean it is just every man for himself. Four-way stops, that's the way you should treat it, and just be careful out on the roads. One last question, because I saw some people did bring this up here on our live feed, and they want to know, will I still be able to even take a shower?
Right.
Well, maybe. Maybe.
It depends.
Because this is a tricky question. What we're finding is that most water is delivered to your home via electric pipes. But still, your water may or may not go off. So remember to try to conserve as much as possible. And if you have bottled water to spare, you can still flush your toilet by pouring some water into the bowl and flushing as usual. But this is the type of situation that people are having to deal with. So many of our neighbors, 800,000 customers, that amounts to millions of people right now, Madison. And PG&E, they gave us an update on what was going on tonight and why they are doing these shutoffs. They really wanted to reiterate that this was for safety.
We would like to remind our customers and our community members as to why we are making this decision. And this decision is all about public safety, which is our most important responsibility. Given the forecasts for the severe and widespread wind conditions that Scott will discuss, and the increased fire risk associated with these conditions, we took this step to ensure the safety of our customers and our communities as a last resort. And we're committed to reducing the risk of catastrophic wildfire events.
And we know it's very hard for people as they go through this, but PG&E meteorologists are saying the weather is just very dangerous.
These events historically are the events that cause the most destructive wildfires in California history. And so we're seeing some of the same conditions that are going to develop in this event that we've seen in previous offshore Diablo and Santa Ana wind events. So it's a pretty serious situation.
As they said, and Monica has been saying for a while now, this is going to be a big issue for at least a few more days to come.
Yeah, and we've been talking to a lot of people on Facebook today, just now on this Facebook Live, saying people are having issues again with cell phone service. So we are trying our best to answer that problem tonight. We're making calls to T-Mobile and Sprint and not PG&E, also, well, PG&E too. But you know,
we are making calls to PG&E.
We are making calls to PG&E. But now talking about more the cell phone carrier services. Verizon is the one I was actually thinking of. So we do have a statement from Verizon. I'm just going to read a couple little bits of this to you all. They say they have generators and backup batteries at the majority of their cell sites. That's the cell towers you see. And all of our switch locations, that's the network nerve sensor. That's the area that has all the large network, the grid for Verizon, if you will. So they have those backup generators. They also are able to keep the network up and running if commercial power is lost, and they are able to refuel the generators to keep them running. But we do know, according to some state officials, they're bringing in these convoys from a different area into different counties that are maybe at risk for losing cell phone service tonight. So here's what they said when we asked them how they're preparing.
Generally, cell towers by all providers have a battery capability for a length of time depending on the draw, but generally 8 hours plus. Most major cell components, the hubs overseeing the remote cell towers, have standby generation. The challenge then becomes not the batteries or the generation, but the capability to get fuel to them to keep them up and operational.
And so, again, we're talking about the cell towers just really quick to wrap up here as we're continuing to make phone calls for you all. They say that they're looking at those major hubs, those network centers, those cell towers to be able to run in a situation like this for 5 to 7 days. So, again, they're bringing in convoys and standby generation, standby generators, because if the power outages withstand more than 5 days, that's when a problem is going to happen. So they're preparing for those backup generators, also those batteries to keep the wireless services going. So, of course, we're still going to follow this for you all in terms of the cell phone services issue that I know we're hearing from a lot of you in terms of T-Mobile, also AT&T. They have waived all fees for AT&T customers. That's something that just that
Girl, you can't just drop that like that on us. What you say? What did AT&T do? They have waived?
Waiving. Yeah, if we want to, if you can just scroll up a little bit, there's down. I meant there's a little bit more of so they're providing unlimited talk and text and data access by issuing credits and waiving those overage fees and those overage overage charges, and that's for customers based in 758 zip codes across this area. That's going to be running from October 9th through midnight on October 13th. So again, that is going to be just one part of this. AT&T customers, you won't be paying anything extra during this power outage.
Okay, that is some good news. We just got a note from our producer saying that our Lilia Luciano spoke with Santa Rosa police tonight, and they are seeing a major increase in car accidents due to lights out. These are blackout conditions that people are dealing with. They say they are even seeing wrong way drivers because people are just confused. They're not sure. This is why police are asking, if you don't have to go out on the roads, just don't do it. Areas that you might feel are familiar can be confusing when it is pitch black outside and it's hard to know. You don't have street lights. You don't have any working traffic lights. And these are the types of things that you run into. The other issue that we are talking about, of course, is people being able to find resources. Things are flying off the shelves. Our Lena Howland was in Vacaville today. Look at what she found.
I'm Lena Howland in Vacaville, where more than half the city is without power tonight. They are sitting in the dark. So right now we are actually at the Walmart, one of the grocery stores that is still open. They do still have power. We have been out here all day long, and we have seen a consistent flow of shoppers coming in and out of this store all day long, just stocking up on some of their basic essentials. We're talking about water, we're talking about ice, we're talking about all of the things that you might need, those non-perishable goods when you don't have power. Earlier today, this Walmart actually got to a point, and we're going to go back to some video that we shot earlier in the day. This store did run out of water. They did run out of ice, those types of things. Luckily, though, we have since gone back in to check, and they now have pallets and pallets of water. They've since restocked on their supply. So we have also been out here talking to a lot of these shoppers that have stopped by to get some of their products, some of those non-perishable goods. One family, they were on their way to go stay at a hotel for the night, just to get some power to charge their phones, to charge their laptops, and obviously to have some power to turn the lights on, take a shower with the lights on. And so, as in terms of what other people are doing up here in Vacaville while they are without power, there is also a PG&E Community Resource Center. That's where we were at right before we were at this Walmart. And that's a place where people can get their get some power supply. They have outlets all over this Community Resource Center. It's set up at the Mission Church. It's only about 6 minutes away from this Walmart that we are at. And so they have several different outlets. They have several bathrooms, many porta potties. They have an endless supply of water. Anything that you might need is at that Community Resource Center. So those are just a few things of what people are doing up here in Vacaville during this PG&E power shutoff. Again, just to recap, about half the city is sitting in the dark tonight without power because of these PG&E power shutoffs over some fire concerns. We've seen a revolving door of shoppers coming in and out of this Walmart, just coming to get those basic everyday supplies while they are without power. And they do have that Community Resource Center, again, set up at the Mission Church. So for now, that's all we have up here in Vacaville. Back to you guys.
All right, and Lena, not far from where you are in Solano County is Fairfield, and that's where they're experiencing some water problems. So what they're experiencing right now is one of their water treatment facilities is not able to produce at full capacity. So fortunately, it has a backup generator, but that means it's working at a reduced rate of about 50%. Now, city officials want everyone to know that the water's safe to drink, but they're asking residents to be mindful and conserve water wherever possible. Obviously, we're in this moment right now where they just don't know how long these power outages are going to last. So today, I spoke with Lieutenant Josiah Jacobson with the Fairfield Police Department, and this is what he had to say.
The biggest part we would ask is your lawns, your landscaping, they'll survive. So please don't use water for landscaping. It's not something that's needed. Use it for what you need for cooking, cleaning, and things of that nature. And if everybody does that, that'll obviously change the amount of water that's being consumed, and that's the conservation that we just want everyone to try to think of.
And Chris and Madison, of course, this is a really big deal. They want people to make sure that they're doing the most that they can to preserve the water that they have right now, just in case this lasts a long time. They have those backup generators, but you just never know.
Okay, we thank you for that update. It just goes to show this is impacting people in multiple different ways.
Absolutely. We do are following all of this for you tonight in terms of our crews who were out in the field tonight. We have crews in Placerville, Vacaville, again, like where Lena was just at, Santa Rosa. We have Rio Vista covered, also Nevada City. So really widespread in terms of where our reporters are tonight, gathering information for all of us to bring us up to speed on how people are doing, what are the issues people are facing when it comes to how this power outage trickles down into every facet of life. Traffic to public safety to what's going on at the grocery stores, the gas stations, places that people visit every single day.
Areas in the foothills are feeling this shutoff especially hard. Placerville has not had power since last night. Our Mady Gomez spoke to the city manager about what they are doing to deal with the shutoffs and keep the community safe.
That's right. So I've been in Placerville since earlier this morning. It's been an eerie sight to see, almost apocalyptic. Everywhere you look, the lights are out. The gas station and most of the shops here on Main Street in the Old Town area are closed. I want to bring in Cleve Morris. He's the city manager for the city of Placerville. Now, I know the city has nothing to do with this shutoff. However, you guys are maintaining stability and keeping people safe.
Correct. We are doing what is necessary to keep as much on as we can. All of our utility services, water, sewer, et cetera, we have backup power on and we're keeping those running. Transportation is a big issue for us, our street lights and et cetera. Most of our lights in town are functioning as four-way stops because of the power being out. We did work with PG&E and Caltrans to make sure that the lights on Highway 50 are remaining operational, because that's a huge traffic nightmare when that happens and pushes traffic over onto Main Street. So yeah, we are continuing to keep things going as the best we can.
And then I do understand that some of your city staff will have to be released early, possibly tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll play that by ear and see what is going on. As you know, in today's world, technology plays a big part, and if we don't have computers, one of our buildings, our city hall actually, does not have backup power on it, which is not critical to our operations, and that's why it doesn't. All of our others, police services, our town hall, public works, our wastewater plant, all have backup power. So in the case where, you know, there's a lot of work we've done going into this to allow them to do filing and stuff that you don't need computers for, but eventually that comes to an end, and so we will evaluate as time goes on tomorrow and see what we need to do.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for your time. And coming up at 6, hear from some of the shop owners and how they're working through the shutoffs. Also, hear from some folks who are saying that actually these power shutoffs are actually good for their families because it's helping them disconnect from all the electronics and connect with each other. Reporting in Placerville, Mady Gomez, back to you guys.
Boy, that's some positive thinking, isn't it?
Right, I know. We've got a large, wide range of people and their perspectives tonight.
I don't think I'd heard anybody say it was good for the family.
I haven't either. Yeah, but you know, it does. I did see Tuolumne County post on their Instagram. It's like Visit Tuolumne County, and they were talking about how it's great to get outdoors. And so it does, you know, if the movie theater's not working, if you can't watch anything on your TV, but you can watch us on Facebook Live, you know, we get that. But there's always something to do outside.
That's true. I tell you what, Monica, might not be a great time to be outside this tonight, though, huh?
You're right about that. Yeah, it was tough being outside today as well. I know it was a tough commute, even in the morning and the afternoon, just dealing with those winds. I wanted to focus just a moment here on how the winds are already starting to shift. So what I did is I went and I reversed this to about 3:30 this afternoon. So here's what we're going to find is that the winds are going to be shifting not only in speed, but direction as well. Very important part of this story, because the wind direction can either help deliver some moisture or really dry things out. So let's take a look here, and I'm going to put it into motion. Now, what we're seeing throughout much of the day are those northwest winds. We saw a bit of a shift to the southwest, especially over towards the coastal area, delivering a slightly higher humidity. It was only temporary, though. Winds were still pretty strong at about 15 to 25 miles per hour. Now let's put this into motion, and in a very short period of time, by 7 o'clock tonight, we started to see just a bit of an east component here. So here we are, 7 p.m., starting to see just a bit of an east component. What does that mean? It means that those winds are heading from the east and moving towards the west. And as you can see, that's a lot of land to move over. When they come in from the west, at least it's coming in off the Pacific, generally carrying a lot more humidity. But those east winds can be so catastrophic if we talk about fire danger, because they are dry and warming winds. So here we are right now, and you can see we are having northeast winds at 5 miles per hour for Auburn, still out of the northwest through much of the valley, but now we're starting to see a bit of a northeast component as well over towards Santa Rosa. Again, those are going to be those Diablo winds. Now here's how things are setting up. The low pressure system that brought us some clouds and slightly cooler weather is now moving its way south and slightly off to the east. So it's giving way for a high pressure ridge to move on into the north of us. It's this type of setup that starts to generate those offshore winds. In the northern part of the state, we call them the Diablo winds, closer to the North Bay Hills. And then for the southern part of the state, they're called Santa Ana winds. In October and November, these types of wind events can generally result in catastrophic fires, mega fires, because they're so hard to get a handle on in a very short period of time. The reason being is they accelerate through the hills. So anybody that's been over to the coast, you don't even have to go into Southern California. If you've been up here, tried to head over towards, say, Stinson or even towards the Bay Area, you know that there are areas that it's a lot of rolling hills, some canyons, and very difficult actually to get to the coast in some parts of the North Bay area. They're dry and warm winds with explosive fire growth. Anything that starts up the hill will move its way down the hill, and actually those winds help accelerate the fire growth. Again, it's hard for fire managers and emergency officials to really get a handle on containment with this type of wind event. As far as our peak wind gusts for today, at about 30 to 35 miles per hour. North of this area, though, closer to Redding, we did have a wind gust close to about 45, 50 miles per hour. That being true as well over towards the coast, we had just a little wind event that resulted in close to a 50 mile per hour wind gust. But it will change for tonight. As we head towards the midnight hour, that's where we really start to see some concentrated areas, particularly those offshore events. The Diablo winds developing for the North Bay Hills with 65 mile per hour winds possible. And then just off to the east here on the west side of the valley, you can see how the contours are really changing, the colors on this map. That's how our weather model is depicting some of the changes that we'll see in the speed of the wind. It doesn't necessarily show us with these contours where the direction is going to be coming from. And that really plays a part in when we talk about fire behavior, because if they were coming in from the southwest, we wouldn't have quite the discussion that we're having right now. Because these are going to be offshore winds, that's what really elevates the fire concern and gives us that extreme fire danger. So here we are on the west side of the valley as well. Lots of dry grass in that area. That also can be a big fire hazard. And then for the 80-50 corridor, look at this. We've got a lot of the yellows and oranges and reds, even some purples up here. 40 to 50 mile per hour winds. I'm particularly concerned of the areas north of Highway 50, just down the hill from South Lake Tahoe. That seems to be an area of focus for about the past 12 hours. Weather models have continuously been consistent on that area being pretty hard hit with some strong winds. And then by tomorrow morning, still pretty strong as far as the winds. Be prepared. The potential for travel delays will exist tomorrow morning. I don't know how many of you were on the morning commute, evening commute, and it just seemed a little bit more slow going. Perhaps people taking it easy. One, because of some traffic lights being out, but otherwise just some debris rolling around on those highways and even some surface roads. By tomorrow afternoon and evening, things start to quiet down here. We'll pick up for Southern California. So the other big part of it, as I've been mentioning, it's all about the direction of the winds. And unfortunately, what we have with this wind event is very dry conditions. Fairfield still with only a 9% humidity. That is so low for this time of the evening. We are approaching 10 o'clock here, and that humidity should be upwards of about 40 to 50%. And we're still in the single digits. We're closer to about 50% for Santa Rosa, but we're just now starting to see more of those drying winds affecting that area. But any kind of drying that we have, in addition to the fact that we haven't had significant rain since May, it's not necessarily a good setup for us for all that fuel that could burn if there was a spark. Extreme fire behavior will continue, at least the fire danger, through, again, look at this, right around that Highway 50 area there towards South Lake Tahoe, and for the west part of the valley, as well as the North Bay Hills. Then by tomorrow afternoon and evening, all of this starts to shift its way southward as we start to focus more on those Santa Ana winds. We'll start to see a little bit of relief from the fire danger. Doesn't mean that we're just automatically going to get that power turned back on, but we will start to at least be able to start to reassess how everything is shaping up in terms of the power outages and power lines down or anything of that nature. Red flag warning in effect until 5 o'clock tomorrow evening with the gusty winds and low humidity. And all of these areas, again, it doesn't mean that you have to be by the hills, the foothills over towards the North Bay Hills to be ready to evacuate anybody near some grassy fields. You know, we've seen that happen before. Just this weekend on Sunday, we had over in Vallejo, a hillside start to burn up, and some of the folks that live just down the hill from that were expecting to have to evacuate because they just happened to be near a big grassy area. Also have that wind advisory in effect until tomorrow, highest over exposed ridges with the chance for rapid fire spread. Again, this is the situation that we've seen time and time again over the past couple of years that unfortunately, we had the North Bay fires. We thought, oh, we won't have another event like that for 10, 20 years. That was just so devastating. It was just about a year later, had the Camp Fire. So now we're taking the precautions and saying, you know what, this is not a one-time event every 10 years. This is the reality of where we are right now. Madison and Chris.
Sadly, that is the sad statement. This is part of what appears to be the new normal. There were some challenges in Auburn today, Madison.
Oh, yes, there were. And it comes to the gas. When people are trying to fill up, these lines are incredible. And so we are just now getting more details, but we're going to just talk about first the gas that people are trying to fill up as this power shutoff is impacting so many different people. We had Carlos Herrera up in Auburn today talking to people who were trying to fill up. He's got an update for us.
I'm Carlos Herrera in Auburn, where tens of thousands of people are without power today. It was shut off by PG&E at midnight. It's causing all sorts of trouble for people who live here. Traffic on Highway 49 was at gridlock during the morning commute, making it a nightmare to get in and out of the city. All gas stations in the city are also closed, forcing commuters to drive 15 miles to Rockland to find the nearest open gas station. Definitely an inconvenience, since more than half of the people who live here commute at least 20 miles to go to work.
I'm not even aware how far down the hill do you got to go to get power? How far down in the hill do you got to go to get signal and make a phone call? It's pretty confusing, and we didn't get any warning. The first I heard about this was yesterday.
It's kind of a bummer because there is no gas stations open right now, so it's really an issue right now.
I'm kind of worried about food in the house because we got the kids. It's just the first of the month, got our budget done for food, and try to figure something out. Honestly, I wouldn't have minded as long as we've gotten more notice. A day notice is just not enough.
Business owners were also left in the dark. The owner of the gas station on Highway 49 and Dry Creek Road loaded up his pickup truck with food, trying to keep it from going to waste. He expects to be without power for the rest of the week.
And with these shutoffs, we're also having a Gas Buddy app. They're helping people by activating its fuel availability tracker in Northern California.
The tracker helps drivers find gas stations that have electricity and fuel, and the app differentiates which stations are with and without power, or both. One of the other things that we are pointing out is that we do have a section on our website, your questions on PG&E power outages answered, okay? So if you go to abc10.com and click on your questions on PG&E power outages answered, these are some of the main questions that we're getting. I'll go through some of them. It's not even windy. Why is the power still turned off in my area?
So many people asking that question. Yeah.
The power could be off in your area even if it's not windy outside. This is because it may be windy where your power is generated. That's the thing, which is why your power may be turned off even if you're not experiencing bad conditions. How long will the power be out? Most folks want to know. Well, power outages are expected to continue until at least Thursday, but here's the thing. California residents are urged to plan for power to be shut off for as long as 7 days.
Yeah, and you may be wondering why. That doesn't make sense, right? If the power is only going to be turned off until tomorrow, why 7 days in general? And so that's because, again, PG&E has to go inspect every inch of every single line to make sure that the wind did not damage a line, because therefore if they were to re-energize and turn the power back on, that could cause some serious problems, potentially even a fire if they weren't able to inspect all those lines. We're talking about helicopters they have on standby, ready to go to inspect from the sky. Also, they've got linemen who are ready to go check out the main power lines.
Small army, you
right.
might call it.
Yeah,
that's ready to go.
So that's why 7 days at the most, according to PG&E.
Denise, we see your comments talking about these power outages may end up causing more issues than they actually help in the long run. That's something that we are also hearing from people. Most folks want to know, where can I find an affordable generator? And Tony Barreto, we thank you for writing in. Tony suggests that folks go to Harbor Freight. He says they have some pretty nice generators for cheap if you need one. And then this is another question we get a lot about. Will my gas stove work in a power outage? Probably not. Most gas stoves operate on gas and electricity, so there's questions about whether or not they'll be functional once the electricity is off, and whether or not you can use them safely is the other thing.
Right, and I just experienced this again when I was over just this past weekend in Mammoth when the power was shut off. We had a gas stove at the Airbnb where we were staying, and all we needed was a match, and we were able to light that and still cook and still use the stove. We were able to still make coffee by heating up some water, pouring that into the coffee maker. So there's ways to get around this. It's not ideal. We understand that completely. But again, gas stoves could potentially work if you do have some matches or even just a lighter in general. You want to be careful, though. Don't turn it up all the way because that fire can just really explode.
We've got some new locations in too where folks are experiencing outages. Alameda, Contra Costa, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz counties are having their power shut off even as we speak. This is part of that phase 2 according to PG&E. Let's talk about schools. Schools were closed today. Some are saying they will now be closed tomorrow as well. There will be no classes at Folsom Lake Community College's Placerville campus. Esparto Unified School District schools are also closed tomorrow. We are updating this list on our website as more schools make announcements, Madison.
Yeah, we want to make sure too that you all know that abc10.com/links is going to be the best website to go check right now. Of course, that's on our website, but that's where we're putting all the links for you in terms of PG&E, the school shutoffs, the school outages, not outages, the power outages rather. And so the school closures, that's what I meant to say. We have abc10.com/links for all the new PG&E website as well, because we're still hearing there's some issues with that website. It's been a little finicky for some people. Sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not. Again, this is a new website they launched just today to help people understand.
Totally random stuff though, huh?
Very
random. Numbers and all type of stuff on there. So if you want to make it easy for yourself, abc10.com/links. We are providing you with the resources that you need. We had some interesting anecdotes, Madison. There's a bar in Placerville that we're at, and we're going to head there tonight live at 11. That they are doing karaoke by candlelight. Patrons are wearing headlamps, we're told, and they've got the karaoke machine is being powered by the generator.
So they're still singing.
Yes, yes. Nevada City Council, they had their meeting tonight by candlelight. Might be a first time they've had to do that. The generator they were using was running out of gas, so they took out candles and flashlights, and the city council meeting went on as scheduled. This is our reality. Can you believe it?
It is, and it's affecting so many people. We're talking again 800,000 customers at most, and that's customers. So Brandon Ritteman put it in a good way to explain that. Customers means the little meter that they're measuring. So that could be on a building, that could be on a restaurant, that could be on an apartment building, a house of 5. So again, this is affecting a lot more than 800,000 customers tonight.
One thing we also want to remind you about is the community resource centers that are available to folks. Do we have that graphic that we can pull up to remind people that PG&E has open resource centers in the communities losing power? They are free places to go to charge your phone and get some AC. They have room for 100 people at each location, and they will be open from 8 in the morning to 6 at night for as long as the outages last. We have that full list of locations on abc10.com, but this again is a resource that PG&E has set up in several communities that are impacted by these power outages tonight. One of the things that we are doing is we we are doing wall-to-wall live coverage here on abc10.com and, of course, on the Facebook page so that you get updates that you need. We'll also be having our live coverage starting on ABC for the late news tonight at 11 o'clock. And then we are going to really go in for the long haul. We're going to be with you on through midnight and early into the morning, because that is when those winds are really expected to pick up. That is when we are expecting to see this wind event really make an appearance. And so we will be here live with you. Monica will be tracking conditions. We have our whole weather team in the building tracking and crunching the numbers to look at what is important and what you need to know. Solano County, one of the places we're tracking now?
Yeah, Solano County is where we're also tracking. We do have reporters too. Just briefly want to mention where we have reporters tonight in Placerville, in Vacaville, Santa Rosa, Rio Vista, and Nevada City. So we do have people all over the board here tonight covering these power outages for all of us in Northern California, and some of these major cities seeing major blackouts affecting so many people. But also Becca Habegger was in Solano County talking to people there about what they're experiencing. Take a look.
The lights here in Vacaville's Nut Tree Plaza could be out in a matter of hours. In fact, when we got here, we met a couple trying to find more information about the PG&E outage without much luck.
We don't know if it's going to affect our specific area or neighborhood or business.
Mike Nubani has been getting warnings from PG&E about a possible shutoff in Fairfield, where he and his family live. But PG&E's website showing a map of the potential outages has been down throughout the day, overwhelmed with the amount of visitors.
And by the way, when you call, they tell you they cannot accept any phone calls at this point.
He's also the general sales manager at Vacaville's Buick GMC dealership.
So tomorrow, I don't know what I'm going to be dealing with, honestly, because our business depends on, the power, of course, phones, computers, everything.
It's a jarring reminder of how dependent we all are on electricity.
You can't put gas in the car, you can't charge your phone, you can't go to the ATM, you cannot, there's nothing you can do, really, but to sit and wait and pray.
In a Facebook Live, the Solano County Sheriff said you should be aware of which cities near you will not be affected by the shutoffs.
This is an incident, not a disaster. Correct? So what we mean by that is there are going to be many places that have power. The east side of Vacaville will have power, Dixon, Sacramento, and so if you need supplies, you'll be able to go get supplies.
The city of Vacaville worries the outage could affect the water supply and asks people to limit their water use.
This is a catastrophe. This is like you're dealing with something really major right here.
Trying to find more information, Nubani feels he's in the dark, and starting overnight, he might actually be in the dark.
The city of Vacaville says the outage could affect traffic lights. So if you arrive at an intersection and the red lights are blinking or the lights aren't working at all, treat it as a four-way stop.
And again, that was Becca Habegger in Solano County last night talking ahead of these power outages that we're seeing. Again, we are live. We are continuing our breaking news coverage of the PG&E power shutoffs affecting more than 800,000 customers across Northern California tonight. So many people impacted by this.
One of the things that we have been trying to get across to you all is that police want to remind you that they are dealing with several outages across the area, and that this is causing several accidents. We know that folks in Auburn were saying that they needed to bring in extra resources to try to deal with some of the issues that they were facing tonight. We've also been trying to answer some of your questions. We have some of the most asked questions online at abc10.com so that you can get your questions answered. This is an unprecedented event. When you talk about 800,000 customers, when you talk about millions of people impacted, when you talk about rolling blackouts across miles and miles and miles of space, we are here for you to answer your questions. One of the things that we're wanting to do is get you over to Monica now so that she can give you the very latest on conditions throughout the night.
Well, as you said, we've been scouring the numbers, and so I've been really getting fine-tuned into some of these local areas, especially some of the hills. And right now, this is what I'm able to find. Current winds and gusts right around parts of this 80-50 corridor have already been exceeding 40 to 45 miles per hour, taking it over towards the Vacaville Hills, seeing some wind gusts up to about 40 to 45 miles per hour. Then when we start to talk about some of these North Bay Hill areas, I am seeing some readings at about 50 to 60 miles per hour for gusts. Those are at the ridge tops, which is the forecast, but a little bit later in the evening. So I'm kind of waiting to see if we get more readings like that that are consistent. But just so you know, those are the kinds of numbers that we're looking at right now. All right, here's a look at the current wind speeds that are sustained, closer to about 15 to 20 miles per hour. But one thing of note is the direction. If these were south to southwest winds, they would be delivering a whole lot of humidity and a lot less fire danger. But instead, these are northeast winds. What does that mean? It means that they're coming from the north and east and traveling over a great distance of land. There's not a lot of moisture for them to gain. Instead, they continue to dry out. They can accelerate if they head through the hills, posing an even bigger fire danger. As far as our peak wind gusts so far, at about 30 to 35 miles per hour, but we have seen, like I said, some pockets of areas that have seen some of those higher gusts already. In terms of what we're going to be seeing through the rest of tonight, one thing of note, look at the colors on this map. Look at how they change after midnight through early tomorrow morning. Extreme fire danger will be happening for that 80-50 corridor, with continued wind gusts at about 40 to 50 miles per hour. On the west side of the valley, we're looking at closer to about 35 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts. And then as we head into those North Bay Hills, parts of the Vacaville Hills, but a little bit farther to the west, we have the potential to see up to 65 mile per hour wind gusts. Now that will continue until about 7 o'clock in the morning, meaning morning commute is going to be a bit of a rough one, possibly with debris flying around on the roadways. There could be some branches on the roads, maybe some trees that might come down as well. It's one of those that might take a little bit longer tomorrow. Those winds start to die down. They're going to back off by tomorrow evening, leading to lowering fire danger. Humidity right now is still very low, especially right along that I-80 line here. Fairfield with only 9% humidity, Sacramento at 15, higher for Santa Rosa at 47, and a bit higher as well for that 80-50 corridor, but South Lake Tahoe only at 27%. We should be upwards of 30, 40, 50% at that point in the evening. Low pressure system that brought us the clouds, a bit cooler weather yesterday, now moving its way southward. That's the position that it's going to be heading for tonight. This is all happening right now as we speak. Everything is starting to develop with that high pressure ridge to the north of us. So we get those offshore winds developing. Unfortunately, they accelerate through the hills. They're dry and warm with explosive fire growth potential. All right, we're going to wrap it up here with our live coverage. Of course, we've got the LNT that's coming up at 11 o'clock on our broadcast channel.